Welcome back to the Common Thread Part 2 of our Star Wars special. Quick disclaimer from our last episode covering the top 15 characters. Yes, this episode, there will be spoilers as we cover the rankings of the best Star Wars movies from last to first. And I will also tell you that we are going to try absolutely so much harder to do it under an hour and 18 minutes. Thank God, I know. Also, other disclaimer, I actually did my homework this time because last time I heard some complaints about my accuracy. Well, this time, kids, we're on.
I did not do my homework.
Good.
So, relying on Devin.
Cool. So, this time, me and Quinton had a meeting of the minds. And pretty much we looked at our rankings, and we decided, you know what, 12 through 9, we all know what 12 through 9 is. For at least me and him were on the same page. So 12 through 9, we're just going to do together. And then 8 through 1, that's where it gets a little hairy, kids. And that's where you should stay tuned. So without further ado, because I don't want to waste any more time, we're just going to get right into it, to the nitty gritty. Number 12. To start us off, I didn't forget. Okay, it is, without a doubt, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. And Quinton, I'll let you take it off with why you think it is the worst Star Wars movie, because it is.
Rogue One is that movie that absolutely not a single Star Wars fan asked for. No one. Not a person asked for it. Could fully do without. It was trying to be a moneymaker for Disney. Congrats on them for getting $500 million on it, probably plus, which probably helped them make the other movies. But other than that, there's pretty much nothing really great
Dinner
to it.
Still was about the only cool thing. That's about the only. I have nothing else to add to that because I feel the exact same. I didn't need it. I didn't want it. It was great visually, but did it add anything for me? No.
Nope.
I mean, ultimately, it's a big spoiler alert. You already knew it. There's a disclaimer. They all die. So, woo! Sick. Clean slate. Nobody gets mentioned. Nobody gets talked about. It's a story that nobody gives or needed a shit about in the Star Wars realm. Anything else to add to that, or are we going to just...
And number 11.
Number 11. Okay, Quinton, why don't you tell us what number 11 is?
Number 11 is The Clone Wars, the animated movie, not the show. And so the reason it's above Rogue One is because it's still a little bit better than Rogue One. But the Clone Wars animated movie was hot garbage. They really got their shit together when they made the show, which is great. Show has outstanding reviews. The movie, though, if you look it up, has a really low rating. Everything about it is really just bad. It's super confusing because they kind of just plop you in the middle of the Clone Wars. They don't even have a start or really end to it.
Quick disclaimer, though, I haven't seen it, but I still would put it higher than Rogue One. I don't think anything could be worse than Rogue One, so therefore Clone Wars just a little bit. You know what? Actually, the bottom 4 of these movies for me, I mean, they're not much higher than one another in the grand scheme of things. They're just like little decimals higher than the other ones. They're just the worst 4.
Well,
I mean,
maybe 9 is like
9 could make. All right, 9 may be significantly better, but the definite bottom 3. If there was like a ranking, like if we could scale them, I mean, these movies are, out of a scale of 10 for me, are definitely like 5 and below, without a doubt. It's a 5 and below. So, Clone Wars, haven't seen it, don't care. Moving on, number 10, go.
Attack of the Clones, episode 2. I'll let you take that. Why?
Buckle up, kids. I'm going to freaking wreck this. Okay, so Anakin Skywalker is now an adult. Fast forward, he's an adult now. The whole movie premise is basically him and Padme go on a love extravaganza. There's not much happening. It's a big setup. It's just like like they're catching up to like, oh, we need to get Anakin to be older, but we also have to get set up for the 3rd movie. And it's just like mishmash. It was great at the time. If you rewatch it as an adult, let me know if you watch episodes 1 through 3 and tell me that number 2 isn't hogwash. You get
Only good thing about it is Mace Windu killing what's his face.
Fett.
Django. Yeah.
Django. Yes.
But yeah, other than that,
there was that battle scene at the end. Like, it was just kind of like what, like, you just wanted there to be more than the Battle of Geonosis, and like it's like that was. And
they always hype it up in every other like Star Wars thing too, but it's not really that intense, all things considered, like compared to some other stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll just have to say this much though: the middle movies for most of the Star Wars series, aside for a couple, are rough around the edges. Not good. Not good. Yeah. The middle ones, they just have trouble gluing it together, but then it comes back. Like the first one is like, middle one, blah, and then it comes back right up. So, number 2, you can just tell me all of your feelings. For us who grew up on that movie, I don't care. Hogwash. Okay, moving on. Number 9.
Solo. Highest of the Outcast movies. So to be perfectly honest, I don't know about you, Devin. All things considered, Solo's like not that bad. I mean, again, it's one of those movies, nobody was really asking for it. No one was like, oh, I wish we got a full movie about how Han met Chewie. No one cared because they were best friends.
Yeah.
But I mean, all things considered, like, I think the acting was pretty good. You had some pretty standout people, like you got Donald Glover as Lando, then you got Emilia Clarke in there. So I mean, all things considered, like where would I rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? Probably like a strong 7. I mean, it's definitely not anywhere as good as like the standalone movies, but
I give it like a 6, maybe like 6.2. Just like the only thing I had about it was like, again, how does it all tie in other than it's Solo, it's Han's like kind of thing.
It also
there's
just
a huge gap in time, and I'm having trouble with the timeline of that movie because
the timeline of that movie makes no sense at all. Yeah, absolutely zero sense. Especially when at the end, when, again, spoiler, whatever, when she's like a part of that clan who like is then talking to Darth Maul, and you're like, when the fuck is this even happening? So it kind of almost makes Han Solo out to be like 15, 20 years older than Leia, which then is a whole another weird aspect to Star Wars.
Big time. Because technically, so you're like, let's say, so Han Solo is episodes 4 through 6. Darth Maul died episode 1. Think about it for a second. Just think about it.
Yeah. I mean, he is alive technically after episode 3, but like when he dies, when Obi-Wan kills him for the legitimate time to like when that movie starts is like that's still probably like gotta be at least 10 years. At least. And
even thinking
in
about
Rebels that, too, Leia's like 12 or 13 and Han's like in his 20s. So who knows? I don't know.
They really love that freaking, I don't know. Anyways, all right. So that's where we draw the line. I mean, we're pretty agreeable on those movies being at that ranking. Now, this is where things get interesting. So, number 8, Q, take us away.
So, number 8, I put as episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. So the reason for this, which we were kind of talking about a little bit before we started the podcast, was because basically the only standout to this movie is the realization that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker and is Luke's father. That's pretty much it. Just like every other middle Star Wars movie, it's just the setup for the third one, really. Also, just like all of the episodes 4 through 6, obviously there's a really bad pacing issue in there. And basically the whole time, Luke's just trying to become a Jedi. Leia and Han just go on their little love excursion adventure, getting kidnapped, getting saved. Then all of a sudden Luke gets his hand cut off, and that's the end of the movie. That's it.
Wow, I love the
That's it.
summary. That's pretty much it. Interesting. You're going for the OGs. Right at the jugular.
I will say it's the lowest, like the
Oh.
lowest of the old ones for sure.
Okay.
Like,
Okay. Well, you're
the
starting
other
out
ones are higher.
really
Normally.
juicy at number 8. For me, number 8, and I know this is going to be kind of, but the Phantom Menace. Now, I've already taken 2 of the movies of the Clone Wars, and here's why the Phantom Menace to me wasn't like, okay, so when we were kids, yes, it was mesmerizing, it was fantastic, because when you watch the older ones, episodes 4 through 6, like visually, it's just, it's like not something you want to look at that's pleasant. Now, as a kid, when Phantom Menace comes out, you're like, ooh, Darth Maul, badass. Qui-Gon Jinn, Liam Neeson, badass. Obi-Wan Kenobi, badass. Slow it down. Watch it as an adult, okay? Darth Maul's still badass. Qui-Gon Jinn's still badass. There's not as much meat and potato in the whole story plot as you think. Most of it is really this young Anakin Skywalker who at the time is kind of a sweet kid, right? He's just kind of in the slums. And, you know, most of the movie is him racing, and all you will hear for a solid 30 minutes of that movie is
And it's so cool, guys. It's
it
so
is
cool.
so cool, but I guess it's not for me. Like, at the same token, I just ultimately I'm like, here's a young Anakin, here's an introduction to this series, and you know what really capstone the whole thing for me? Jar Jar Binks, kick it in the ass for an all-time annoying character of Star Wars history. Don't even come at me with that. He's hands down the worst. So for me, number 8, episode 1, takes the cake of the Phantom Menace. And how did it all end? We lose fucking Darth Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn in one swift freaking movie where if they had kept both of them, I would have been much more content than Count Douchebag Dooku and friggin' General Grievous. So, without further ado, moving on to number 7. Take us away.
Episode 7, The Force Awakens. So, of the new series.
Did you plan that? Episode 7 is number 7. Did you plan that?
I did not plan that. But, so the reason I put episode 7 is because it is literally like a remake. It's a remake to capture nostalgia. It has a really bad story, personally. I don't think it's good at all. The acting's a little meh. I mean, Rey's a good character. Ben Solo, Kylo Ren is a good character. And then, like, you have moments of where Poe is a good character, but everybody else, not really that great. You also get the little picture of Scrooge, Luke Skywalker at the end, which kind of was just like a bummer of the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't really good. It wasn't good for me when we saw it, too. Like, we saw it together. The first thing I said was, like, this movie sucked. I didn't like it. Now that I've watched it a few more times, I do think it's okay. But, I mean, all things considered, and like, I moved it up before this podcast. It was a lot lower. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Number 7 for me. First of the oldies, first of its kind, OG. I also went with episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Now, I will tell you why, because I know people are like, dude, why? You don't make any sense, dude. I'm done with your podcast. Well, listen for 5 seconds. The only thing, as Quinton stated prior to, was that Darth Vader was Luke's daddy. And if you think anything else happened, rewatch it, because Luke's training with Yoda for a good half an hour. And if you like that, that's great. You can watch a puppet train with a human. That's the graphics of the 80s at the time. And aside from that, Han's just going to be big old ego macho man Sandy Ravage and going in on things he shouldn't, and gets caught by Lando, who freezes him. So you don't get even a Han Solo at the end there because he's captured and he doesn't talk and he's gone. And it just seems like a little, I don't know. You know, you could tell that they were like, you know, how do we bounce back from that first episode 4? Let's
by
try to make it
pissing
interesting.
off
And that
everyone.
one key moment, and I don't want to downplay it because it's an iconic moment of the ages, and it's why it's a bit higher than it is. Otherwise, I just squash it all together. But when he says, "Luke, I am your father," boom, the rest is history. That's the movie. That's so literally there are moments in movies that make it what it is. That singular moment is the only reason why episode 5 is even in conversation to me because of that moment. And I know, oh my God, how could you do that? Watch the whole freaking movie, and I guarantee you just wait for that one moment where they're duking it out and they duel, right? And then that moment happens. That's the only reason why you watched episode 5. Don't even at me. If you watched it because Luke was training with Yoda for a half an hour, congratulations. You might be the only human in the world that feels that way. So, number 6, Quinton, go ahead.
Number 6 for me is kind of fun. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi.
Holy cow. Wait, you're talking like episode 6, the episode 6.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. Go ahead. No, I don't have anything to say. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, so here's what happens in episode 6. They basically just have to redo what they did in episode 3 because they couldn't fucking do it right the first time. So, they got to go back, fix their
Episode
mistakes.
4.
Episode 4, yes. And then, I mean, it is. I don't know. I don't really like the older ones. That's really just it. And plus, I'm watching them like again as a side note to last podcast. I just started watching them like a couple of months ago, so I was not 6 years old being like, "Oh my God, this is great." I'm watching this in 2020, where the animation shit, the graphics shit, the acting shit. You just got to get through it. Yeah, and I mean the only cool thing really about that movie was like them rescuing each other from Jabba, and like that's pretty much it. And then they got to go fix their mistakes, blow up the Death Star again, and also you get this really, really, really bad image of what Anakin Skywalker is supposed to look like because he's like old and like pasty white and really gross, and their whole moment is ruined by him just looking super fucking weird. And like, yes, this is back in the 80s, so they didn't have a good idea of what they wanted Anakin Skywalker to look like. But if you're watching it in 2021, he does not look like the Anakin Skywalker in episodes 1 through 3. He does not look like
Did you say
the
21?
Anakin Skywalker. What?
You say 2021? I just want to confirm that we're put
2020.
Okay.
Episode 1, 2020.
Oh,
sorry.
gotcha.
Yeah, no, it just doesn't look the same. It's just really like what's supposed to be the super heartfelt moment of them rebalancing the Force is like kind of gross. And all things considered, Luke could have just fucking killed his dad, and then.
Did you just like eliminate? Are there any other old movies that you have? I feel like you've said them all, but maybe I'm mistaken.
No, I still have episode 1.
God.
Right.
Episode
4.
four.
Okay. You go.
Wow. So, I'll save this. I'll save this later on. I'm not going to go through it now. I'm just going to save it. Number 6. Wow, that hurt my head. Number 6. I can't believe you just did that. Episode 8 for me is number 6. The Last Jedi. I really think this is probably where people are like, why isn't it higher? Well, or I mean lower. Because there's one scene in this movie that really captured it all. Otherwise, again, I would say that it is hogwash. But they did some really pretty things visually that I enjoyed. Some of it was just like, what the f- are we doing? Leia floating in space? I get it. I get the frustration there. I get it's like, what are we doing? It's a different writer, director of this movie than 7 and 9. It's not J.J. Abrams. It's friggin' it's this. I don't know who it was, to be honest. It's a different person's take. But one scene for me in this entire movie, in The Last Jedi, changed it all for me, and I'll never forget because I was sitting with my buddies, and I was about to call this whole movie let's just call it. It's a chase. You got a bunch of stuff going on that doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense, and their ship's running low on fuel, so you get a little bit of a race going. You're like, all right, this is it. We're done. Everybody's dying right now. Boom, roasted. We're not getting another one. Luke's being a dick, ruined his whole character arc. I get it. But that planet with the red stuff, beautiful visually. The caves, all that stuff, beautiful visually. Great, awesome, love it. You also see Kylo Ren kill the big bad wolf at the time. What's his name? Not General. Snoke. Snoke. And he kind of teams up with Rey. Badass moment. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I liked it. You can go screw off. The big moment that I'm leading up to, because it was that good. Spaceship. About to run out of fuel. Emperor, what's her name, is like, I have one last thing on my to-do. Light speed through a ship. And now tell me that from just a sound perspective that your balls didn't tingle a little bit when that freaking ship went through, right? And there's like 4 seconds of silence, followed by if you saw that in theaters, you got off. I don't care who you are. It was a moment for me in the theaters. I literally, my jaw hit the ground because it was that great. Like the just the way the visual, like the particles and then the noise, the delayed silence with the blah, and I was like, ugh. And that movie for me went from like I'm gonna give it a 4 point, and then that one moment happened that I've never heard those sounds, seen a moment. They never ever have done that in any Star Wars. Why? Because they didn't have the technology for it. I'll talk about that in a split second. But also, if anybody has a complaint that also in episode 8, Rey and Kylo were talking to each other, Leia and Luke in the old episodes also talk to each other. So lay off of it. That's a thing. That's been a thing. Don't sweat it. No abilities. No. 8. Episode 8, sorry. Number 6. I thought it was good. Decent for that one moment. Everything else was hogwash. We lost Luke Skywalker. It's fine. Number 5. Go ahead. We're in the top 5. We're there.
So I'm going to get right into where you left off. Episode 8 for me. It's number 5. So that moment, beautiful. I think the reason why this movie is so high for me is because, like, so The Force Awakens, definitely brought Star Wars into, the 21st century in a good way. But this was the movie that was, like, really visually stunning for Star Wars. Like, they really got everything right in terms of, like, all of the art pieces, set pieces, everything the characters were wearing, like, everything was just beautiful. It was a stunning movie. And a lot of people like to shit all over Kylo Ren and Rey's, like, character development, but, like, they are the two main characters, and they did have great character development. Like, just because Poe Dameron doesn't have character development doesn't mean shit, because he's not the main character. Same with all the rest of them. Like, they're just the side characters, like, the people you need to focus on. Kylo Ren, Rey Skywalker.
The intro to episode 8 with Poe Dameron starting off just dissing General Hux. Gold.
Yeah.
Watch that. That's the best part. Gold.
Yeah, I won't go more into it because Devin kind of hit on everything. So
number 5 for me, episode 7, The Force Awakens. And you're like, why? Another new one? What the? And I'm like, listen, hear me out for a second. Now, the reason why is because it's the intro. It is the Mecca. It starts off everything. Yes, it's slow. It's pretty, beginner level. Here's a Kylo Ren. But they introduced kind of like new Force abilities because technology, folks, is now in the 21st century. As I stated in the last podcast, if George Lucas had this technology in the 70s and the 80s, we'd be looking at a lot different. It would have been the same thing. It would have. If you want to debate me, we'll call George. I'll give him a buzz, and we'll say, "Hey, listen, George, would you have done this?" And I'm sure he would have been like, damn right, that's sick as hell. So, now that I can't even speak English, I'm ripping and roaring right now. But Force Awakens, it's a great introduction to characters. I do have to tell you, I really liked the idea of the Finn character they had. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm jazzed up. Here's a guy running away from this, these bad boys, and the First Order. And here he comes in all his glory. And he took off his helmet. So there's a man behind the helmet. And there's people behind the helmet. I liked that concept. I liked it. It was cool. I'm not saying they perfected it because they didn't. They ended up ruining it. That's another conversation. But then you get Poe Dameron, funny. BB-8, similar to R2D. Oh my God, can I talk today? R2D2, and all in all though, it is very reminiscent, close to, if not the exact sort of same movie as Episode 4, which you kind of touched upon, but I liked it because it brought me back, but with better graphics, and I liked it. So
when you have nothing to get brought back to,
it just
leaves. That's why it's low.
Yeah. So number 4.
So this is where we do not agree. Is I have the Phantom Menace at number 4. You had it way lower. I think you had it at, was it 8? 8, yeah. Yeah, so the Phantom Menace for me, like, I say that I haven't seen the Star Wars movies, but, like, I did obviously see this movie as a child. Whether or not I saw the whole movie is a different question. But this was definitely the movie, I think, that got everybody into Star Wars if you weren't already a part of it, especially just because of the racing, like the pod racings. It's badass. You got a 6-year-old killing off all these adults in the pod racing. You also get introduced to like some of the best characters, so Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Darth Maul, even though they both die, sad. They should have kept them, just like you said. But all things considered, the only really bad part for me to Episode 1 really is the Jar Jar Binks thing. Like, just kind of how you said before, if you want to get quickly into why Jar Jar's a bad character, go for it.
He's just bad.
It's just
not
a little racy.
Yeah, he's a little racy, but he's also he's just an
annoying character.
Annoying character. That's it.
Didn't really need him. Did not need the comic relief that you were supposed to get from him. But yeah, for me, also one of the reasons why I like it is because it's your first glance at like Anakin really like being about family and like wanting to like not wanting to leave his mom, and then it kind of transcends into Episode 2 where he's like still like, oh my God, my mom's dying, all this stuff.
They rushed that
first
though.
major failure.
They rushed that.
They rushed super hard. Why Episode 2 is where it is, but Episode 1, I thought the pacing was good. Everything was good. Yes, they do pod race for like a half hour, but it's badass. Your turn.
Wow. Also, like Quinton, I disagreed with this choice, but it's higher on mine. Episode 4, the OG, the one that got it started, the one that kind of launched everything. And you're like, why is it higher than Episode 5? Well, because this is sort of the foundation of it. Like, I don't think they had any plans on making any more Star Wars after Episode 4. In one movie, we're introduced to Luke Skywalker, who doesn't know it yet, but runs into R2D2, who has an important message, right? And he's just walking around one day, boom, bam, runs into the Jawa crew or whatever, and he's like, dude, this robot, I got a feeling. Anyways, he doesn't know what's about to transpire. All of a sudden, he's walking into some Ben Kenobi's place one day, and now he's like, you know what? You're gonna be a Jedi, something like that, to that effect. I'm really bashing on it, but it is a great movie because all in one movie we get that right into he's training as a Jedi. Ben Kenobi dies from Darth Vader, who was now we find out somebody who he worked with, he trained, he was very close with. They're friends. They're like brothers. right? But we didn't know that at the time. But you got that sense there was obviously something there because Darth Vader's like, I have a sense in the Force. This is a feeling I have not had in some time. All that jazz. And they get the plans for the Death Star, and then they're like, you know what? We're going to blow it up. And so they leave that movie with, they blow it up. It'd probably be the best movie ever if they just left it at that. Everybody's getting a gold medal, like they just won, gold in the Olympics. So there's a whole medal ceremony taking place for Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and Leia, and then that's the movie for you, kids. If you haven't seen it, it's actually a really good movie. I only have a problem with it because they didn't. I don't know if they thought, hey, well, there's going to be another movie, which is why Episode 5 to me is a little jumbly because they were like, and if you look it up. George Lucas wasn't actually a fan of doing sequels. He didn't think they would be as successful, and typically at that time they weren't. So to have this huge, uproar after one movie, this launched Star Wars. And this launched the icons that are Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia. But other character developments later on, like Episode 8, trash Luke Skywalker. It's kind of sad. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, kids. And that's Episode 4. So, number 3, Quinton, go ahead.
Episode 4. So Episode 4 is in my top 3. And it's primarily because, again, I didn't watch this until like a couple of months ago. And when you watch the movies in order, going for Episode 3, even though, like, there is that, like, you're going from kind of a semi-okay quality movie to a really bad quality movie. The whole plot makes way more sense. You pick up on a lot more things when you're watching Episode 4. Like all those little tidbits like, oh, I haven't felt this feeling in a while. Like you get that immediately after like Obi-Wan just tries to kill Anakin in Episode 3. So when you watch them in order, it definitely does like make way more sense. And if you haven't seen it, I suggest watching Episode 3 before, so then you get a little backstory. I don't know how anybody would have liked this movie if they didn't have any of that context. But with that being said, it's definitely hands down the best of the original 3. Yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good one. For me, number 3 is Episode 3. Now, a lot of people will say, for me, the only trouble I had with this was the speed in which everything had happened. I mean, everything really flips a switch in this movie. Everything. Anakin, Senator Palpatine is now Darth Sidious. Anakin eventually evolves or becomes Darth Vader. And you watch him really flip into this dark mode and start to question the Jedi Council, the Jedis. Do they have faith in him? Obviously, he doesn't think so. And, you got Peeping Tom, Senator Palpatine, and the whole time you're kind of just frustrated. You're like, Anakin, dude, don't be that dumb. Like, you really think this guy Palpatine is wiser than freaking, like, Yoda, Windu, and Obi-Wan? Apparently so. He's like, I can help your Padme. I can save her. And, like, he's also jealous of Obi-Wan. And, like, where that stems from, they've been working together forever because Obi-Wan's helping Padme because Anakin's being a dick to Padme. But it's all, like, the movie itself is just so dark. And you kind of, like, get attached to it. I think the last movie of all the series are phenomenal. But of all the series, the last movie, this one's probably the worst one for me. But it's also the best because it transpired some of the best, I would say, some of the best duels that we got to see. General Grievous and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan and Anakin. Anakin and Palpatine / Windu. And then Anakin plus or minus 10 kids. Shouldn't have mentioned that. That's messed up. Not the time to say that. But still. But it's just dark. It's one of those movies that I will never forget when I watched. I still watch it, and I'm like, wow. When he comes up those stairs and his eyes are kind of just like a little beady yellow, and you can just tell he's up to no good, and he's friggin' in a different place mentally. He is fully tilted to the dark whatever because of love. My God, was it powerful. Hayden Christensen just delivered. And then that final battle between him and Obi-Wan, meat and potatoes, my boy Obi-Wan took the cake. And then at the last scene you get is just Darth Vader. And then he's just like, finds out Padme died, and he's just like, no! And then all of a sudden, Anakin's like shaking things without any control. Like he loses all these limbs, and all of a sudden, he's friggin' godlike, unbelievable. But he just got his butt whooped by Obi-Wan. Think about that, folks. Boom, roasted. Obi-Wan up on one. So, anyways, go ahead. Number 2.
Number 2 is Episode 9, Rise of the Skywalker. It's just beautiful. The whole movie is just visually stunning. I don't give 2 shits about the pacing in a Star Wars movie. If you're going to get to Episode 9 and then start to complain about a pacing issue, then that's just absolutely fucking ridiculous. So get over yourself for a pacing issue. They all have pacing issues. If you don't think any of them, except for this one, has a pacing issue, I can't help. But all that aside, everything between Kylo Ren and Rey, like especially the scenes where they're literally like transitioning the scenes, they're so smooth. Like you cannot tell. Like it is the best editing of anything Star Wars ever. Obviously, that makes sense because it's the newest one, but yeah. And then you also get to see Ben Solo, like actually be Ben Solo. And the only takeaway from this movie that I really didn't like was that you only get like a solid 20 minutes of Ben Solo. Like when he's like beating the shit out of the Knights of Ren and then he goes back, like that's badass. I could have seen that for a whole movie with Ben Solo. That would have been great. And then the fact that the whole point of Star Wars is balancing the Force, and it took them 9 episodes to finally balance the Force. So anything else that they make in Star Wars, like, can be about different parts of the universe, other storylines. Like, they finally were able to close it off on the Skywalker saga, so we don't have to see any more of it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good choice.
Yeah.
For me, number 2 is Episode 6. Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. Old one. That one's going to stick home with me forever. The old ones have a special place in my heart. The last one especially. That moment, where you got the Ewoks, and all that battle happening. It's mind-blowing. They're taking the trees and destroying the AT-ATs. And just like, it's just, you won't forget where you were when all that happened. And then the final blow up of the Death Star, everything just piecing together. And at the end, Darth Vader has some little incy, wincy, pincy little good side to him. He throws friggin', Darth Sidious over the ledge, right? And everybody's like, wow! You'll never forget that moment when he just decides, boom, and he takes off that helmet. I know you dissed him because he's like, oh, he looks weird. And he got cinched. Let's go back to when I was just talking about how Obi-Wan beat his ass. And he left him there to burn on some planet with no, like, half of his legs. And, like, he's got a robotic arm. He's like half a man. He's lost a lot. And so when you get cinched, you're not going to look like, Giselle coming out the helmet. He barely can take that thing off. He needed a helmet to breathe. So
but you didn't know that, though.
You didn't. You don't.
You did not know that he was cinched, so he just looked weird.
But when he comes back and the ghosts are there, you got Ben Kenobi, Yoda, and Anakin Skywalker there looking at Luke while he's looking at them, and it just like it closes that chapter of the old ones. Like you'll never forget like that whole scene to me. It just takes me away. Like I love that part. The Ewoks are adorable. Chewie and them together, like they're perfect. That movie is pretty epic. They save obviously Han Solo, everything. It's sort of that feel good, everything goes right movie to kind of finish off that capstone. So without further ado, number one, Quinton, what's the number one movie for you?
Oh God, everybody's gonna hate me for it, but whatever, I don't care. Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3 is my favorite movie. Do I think it's the best movie? It's a different question, but it's certainly my favorite. Again, I'm watching these all in order, so like obviously if you didn't watch the Clone Wars, then like Episode 3 is just like there is a really bad pacing issue. All of a sudden he's like goes from like a teen to like just being a straight up asshole. But just like you said, the fighting scenes between like General Grievous and Obi-Wan, and then you have like I mean
Yoda and
all
Palpatine,
like
badass.
everything with what they were given with like the technology they had at the time. The Obi-Wan Anakin fight is for me the best fighting scene of Star Wars, and I think it's kind of difficult to like overlook that in a Star Wars movie. Yeah, I mean you touched upon a lot of stuff with Episode 3, but like for me it's the best one. It's his transition. You see this dude like fully break, like he just collapses. I mean, who's gonna get over the fact that he just fucking murks a bunch of children? Like,
That
you
was
just
that was
like it really is a dark. Like for Star Wars, it's a pretty dark movie, and like my favorite part about Episode 3 is that I don't like it when movies just end like everything is good, everybody has the perfect ending. Like sometimes movies can end like with something bad happening, and that's just how it ends, because like in real life everything doesn't just end great. Like things end shitty sometimes. And so like with Star Wars ending in that trilogy, with it being like this is how he becomes Darth Vader, like everything goes to shit, that's how it ends. Like that's what I love about movies. And yeah, that's it.
That's good though. That's probably one that I think a lot of people our age can relate to. For
And
me,
it's also voted like amongst the Star Wars community the worst. Like putting them all together, it's the worst even to Rogue One, which I think is crazy, but look it up.
so I don't know about that. So my number one, this one's really going to be bold, and I know it's going to be absolutely crazy. A lot of people are probably going to be like, dude, chill. Episode 9. Now, as I've been saying, like there are certain moments I've been talking about speeding issues because listen, I know I've heard everybody's complaints about this new series. I've heard it all. The story arcs are kind of crappy. You know, I get that there are some, but if you go back and you watch all the Star Wars in order, what character arc is to the T perfect? I mean, like it's taken and it's evolved so much, and Star Wars has changed a lot along the way. Episode 9 for me, like I really truly loved the way they kind of just ended it. Now, if you were to focus on some of the other aspects going on, like Finn, Poe, and all that, the real focus is again Kylo Ren and Rey, and they're just what is happening with the Force in that moment. What is the next step? And they kind of take it to that level. You know, in that story, there's a lot happening, right? They got to catch up to speed. They had two different writers at this point. The writer from the episode 7 has to kind of catch up to speed in episode 9, and also tee it off and wrap it up. It is a little speedy, but at the same token, did I just not mention in episode 4 we got a random kid as a farm boy all of a sudden finding out he's a Jedi to then blowing up said Death Star in one movie? Hold your thoughts. Hold your breath. So, episode 9, I mean, you're seeing a whole lot of new abilities take place. I mean, basically, they can see each other now. Like, there's that they're so strong. Their midichlorians must be through the freaking roof. Obviously, that's very apparent. You find out that also they throw in Darth Sidious again. Mind you, in the originals, Darth Sidious wasn't even in until episode 5. Originally, Grand Moff Tarkin was supposed to be the face of the Empire, and then they threw in Darth Sidious as a character. The Emperor was then introduced. now Darth Sidious as we know him. But so taking it back, fast forward, he comes back in episode 9, and he's really the mastermind. He's been around this whole time. Somehow he lived. How, you ask? And they try to catch you up to speed on all of this, also trying to figure out, how do we find Darth Sidious? Where is he at? He's making communications. He's got all these ships. Why isn't he killing people? They're basically like little mini Death Stars now that he's got in his arsenal. That's crazy, right? But it's beautiful. The whole movie is beautiful. You couldn't do that. You couldn't do that years ago. Even when episodes 1 through 3 came out, you couldn't do that. All the visuals were amazing.
Even when episode 7 came out, you couldn't do that.
No, and just the first couple scenes of that movie of episode 9, when you're just given the information that somehow, Darth Sidious is back, and he's, making communications out there. That's wild. It's wild. And then you see this dark pyramid and all this darkness. It's extra now. They've taken it up a notch. And, the last about half an hour for me, epic, right? Obviously it's hard. People were upset with the whole Leia not being in it enough. Carrie Fisher died. I mean, what are you going to expect? You can't really – it's hard these days to really even animate somebody. They did what they could. That's all I got to say about that. Speeding issue, not even worried about it. I thought it was fine. The last 30 minutes, amazing. Like when they go to battle Darth Sidious, it is my all-time favorite Star Wars moment. I'll tell you, seeing those two duke it out with Darth Sidious in that battle where Darth Sidious has obtained enough power to shoot fucking lightning out of his hand and just freeze all the ships, and then they're just free falling. That was fucking sick. And then you got Leia. Right, or not Leia, excuse me, Rey. She's just laying there. And this is also one of my favorite moments. She's laying there, and then she gets all of the oldie voices in her ear. Everyone ever just is like, you can do it. You got this. Voices with you. And it's just like to my ears, I'm like, oh, I know who those voices are. You got like Anakin, Mace Windu, Yoda. Like some of the cartoon characters were even thrown in the mix too. Like, it's crazy how, like, they got all these characters to say something in that scene. So it kind of just brought everything full circle. Like, a whole entire, like, just saga. The Star Wars, like everything was in that moment. And then just, boom, they beat them. And I was like, yeah, you're just stoked. And then there's that back and forth between the Force exchange. And I know, like, I'm not huge on the love thing at the end. I just think that's kind of cliche. And, then people are like, well, she shouldn't have taken this guy. Why? Dude, who cares? Like, you can't go around being like, I'm Rey Palpatine. Like, that carries good weight. Even, no, it doesn't. You should never say that. Some people are like, she should just say Rey. No, I kind of like that she said Skywalker. I kind of like it. Because, Skywalker's got some it's got some balls. I'd rather be a Skywalker than a Palpatine. I'd rather be a Skywalker than anything else that I'm carrying weight on. If you could start fresh, take any name, Skywalker's pack a punch. They're the GOATs. They're good. So, all in all, favorite movie, episode 9, teeing it all off. Sad. You learn a lot in one movie. Sad, great, good, love it. That tees it off. So, shall we just let's just dig through the user picks really quick, wrap this one up, conclude our very extensive Star Wars. So number 12 that you guys, so we had plenty of people ranking. So basically this is the average spot based on the average spot. And this is the rankings that everything fell into. So for you guys and what you guys voted for, and this is what the average rankings were. So number 12, The Clone Wars. Number 11, Solo. Number 10, Rogue One.
Pretty much right on par with us, guys.
Yep.
Good job.
Bottom 3 are just, that's at least everybody has come. Number 9, Episode 8.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
For me, that hurts.
Number 8.
Yeah.
Episode 9, The Rise of the Skywalker, which that I picked it as.
I get why people wouldn't put it as number 1, but like number 8, come on. It can at least be in your top 5, guys.
That's rude.
That's rude. ridiculous.
Number 7, Attack of the Clone Wars episode.
You're gonna tell me episode 2 is better than episode 9?
No.
You're out of your mind.
No.
Out of your minds.
Number 6, episode 7, The Force Awakens. I want everybody to go watch these movies over again and then tell me all the issues. And if you still think that, I don't
Yeah.
Number 5, episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Number 4, episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. 3 through 1, this just pissed. Number 3, episode 4, A New Hope. Number 2, episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. And last but not least, without further ado, number 1 is episode 6, Return of the Jedi. So obviously people like the classics. They like their oldies. And, I can't disagree. Out of all the series, obviously the OG ones have to be, in my opinion, the best of the 3 series. Now, in number 2, I would say the newest ones. I would say episodes 7 through 9 are better than 1 through 3. But you know what? This is like you could debate this for the ages. And you know what? That's gonna conclude things for me. Quinton, do you have anything to add?
I think if you think episode 2, if you think episode 7, episode 1, if you think those are better than episode 9, like, please go rewatch them, because it's just not the case. I'll let people take their episode 4 through 6 for the top 3. Like, I get it. They're timeless, really.
Yeah.
It is the OG Star Wars, so whatever. The only thing I will say is I'm a little shocked that Revenge of the Sith, episode 3, is in 4th place. Like, that's kind of mind-blowing.
I think that's just one of those ones too where people felt like that. There was a lot of good scenes.
Nostalgia.
It is nostalgia. It's nostalgia for sure. And you know what? It's going to be a debate of the ages at the end of the day. It's an opinion-based matter. I appreciate everybody's input, but I don't always agree with it, clearly, and it's fine. Thus, we conclude the Star Wars saga coverage of all the things Star Wars, and thanks to you, Quinton, now I have to go catch up on Clone Wars and Rebels. So thanks for being a part of this, Q. Thanks for everybody who participated, all the 130 of you who did all the polls and the rankings. That was awesome. I hate you all because I don't agree with some of it, but it's fine. You guys rock. It's cool. Thanks for participating. Stay tuned for the next episode of The Common Thread. We've got a lot of fun things ahead, and we won't be talking for an hour. I promise. We'll cut it back. We'll slim it down, and I'll come up with a buzzer or something. So stay tuned until next time, guys. See you later.